to Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the meaning and the power of the most important story in business. The one that answers why somebody should buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. This is the story that defines the very character and nature of an organization. At WordWrite, we call it your capital S story. In each episode, we feature guests who have great insights on business storytelling, who can share their experience and key learnings to help you and your business do a better job of sharing your capital S story to deliver remarkable business results. Today, we're honored to have Jody Fisher as our guest. Jody's worked in New York City PR, boy, that's a rough market, for more than 20 years, representing clients in healthcare, higher education, financial services, real estate, entertainment, and nonprofits. Jody started his own PR agency just this year. We'll talk about that. After building a PR practice for a local marketing company that went from zero to high six figures in just a few years. He also hosts the PR podcast, which interviews people who play a role in how news gets made. Jody also offers tips and insights on his social media channels for experienced and novice PR pros. Jody, a great career starting in journalism and radio reporting, which I think is one of the toughest kinds of reporting to do, speaking as a fellow former journalist. And, you know, in New York City, you get to work on some cool stuff, man. You have to be good in order to do it. But I mean, large scale media events at the World Trade Center, 2008 Papal visit, Space Shuttle Enterprise coming to New York City, opening of the High Line. Dude, you've worked on some really remarkable stuff. Welcome to Storylines Live, my friend.
Well, Paul, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And thanks for that wonderful intro. I appreciate you appreciating my career. I tend to, I try to stay as humble as possible. And I kind of default to that a line from Han Solo in the very first Star Wars movie. My destiny is a lot of simple tricks and nonsense.
Oh, I like that line. Star Wars fan here. You know,
Yeah.
I don't get dressed up in the costumes and all that goofy stuff, but really appreciate the storytelling, as you can imagine, because, you know, George Lucas, when he put that whole series of films together,
Sure, you bet.
he worked with Joseph Campbell, one of the greatest mythologists of all
right.
time, who came up with the concept of the hero's journey. Well, speaking of the hero's journey, Jody, did I miss anything in your background?
Oh, you know what? There's a ton of stuff, but you hit the highlights. I mean, some of my most favorite projects you talked about, and some of the things that you just, you know, you can't believe you get a chance to do, like bringing a space shuttle to New York City, and not just helping to bring it here, but flying it into JFK on a seven. No, I mean, not me literally flying it, but like, you know, playing the PR role of it, arriving on the back of a 747 at JFK, barging it up the Hudson, using a 1,000,000-ton crane to pick it up and put it on the deck of an aircraft carrier, and then having the canopy that shielded the shuttle blow down in a hurricane, and have to reopen the whole exhibit all over again. I mean, just wild stuff you'd never expect.
Yeah, that's why we love the business we're in, right? Because things happen, and you have
absolutely. It's we're in the business of news, and I love the way you describe it, Paul. Is finding your capital S story. It's storytelling. Everything we do is storytelling, and stories are all about people. And so getting to work with really interesting people who are doing interesting things and helping them tell their story, you know, molding it and shaping it and telling it in an effective way to the world to help them do whatever it is, that thing that they do. That's what I love.
Yeah, me too, my friend. Speaking of storytelling, one of the ways that you live that is you have your own podcast. So you were very great to have me on the podcast last year, which I appreciated. So what's that saying about payback? Here you are on Storylines Live. But tell the audience a little bit about your podcast.
Sure. And you yours was one of the highest rated shows
awesome.
of the PR podcast. Yeah, I've been doing that. You know, I'm an old radio guy, like you said. You know, I started in radio. That was my career. And so that gets to be part of your DNA, and it doesn't go away. So sitting in front of a microphone or being out on the street the way I was with a microphone, you know, running around and talking to people, is just in your blood. and I said, let me do something. I started it out by just staring into a camera, and doing a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And after about 20 episodes, I was like, wow, this is boring. Let me go interview some people. And so I just started that podcast, and I called up my friends and in PR and in news and everything else. And I said, come on the show and talk about how we make news. Whether you're in PR pitching stories, whether you're a reporter who's covering stories, maybe you're on the assignment desk, you're a videographer or a photographer. What do you look for in an image? All those types of things, and that are meant to deliver to the audience how news gets made and how we can make it better. Because we live in an information-based world too. And the more we can effectively trade information and inform ourselves what's going on in our world, and we'll leave the politics out of it, just getting information out there, I think is so critically important. PR people have a little bit of a rap as either, bad rap as either spinners, right? Or we play a little fast and loose with the truth. The best PR people, and that's 99% of us, we don't do that. We tell the straight story. We tell it in a positive way. We represent our client's interest, of course, but we never play fast and loose with the truth. And we never, ever lie. My old mentor, Howard Rubenstein, used to have the Mark Twain quote on his desk. It said, if you always tell the truth, you never have to remember anything.
There you go.
And that's it in a nutshell for PR. Tell good stories. Work with good people. Tell good stories. And you started this question with, tell us about the PR podcast. It tells good stories through the lens of interviewing good people who are in this news-making business. New episode every Monday. It's on all your favorite podcast platforms. Check us out. And it's a hobby. It's just something I enjoy doing. And I do it right here from the PR garage, as I call it, right here in my home.
I love your PR garage concept. That's such a cool thing. Folks, we'll put all the links for the PR podcast in the show notes. You really do have to check it out. More than 100 episodes, Jody, and you're in the top 10% of all podcasts globally. Folks, if you don't know this, most podcasts last between only 3 and 9 episodes. The ones that are really good are the ones that hit that century mark. And so, Jody, you got to be doing something right there, my friend.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah. The premise of our podcast, obviously, is talking about this capital S story. And we define that as the one that answers the most critical questions about a business. Why somebody would buy from you, invest in you, partner with you, work for you. We always ask our guests, which of those 4 seems most relevant to where they are in their journey? And you mentioned investing. You had a very interesting answer. So I'd love you to expand on that if you can.
You said in investing? Did I hear that right?
Yeah, what you shared with me in your note to me was that it gets to the heart of what a working relationship really is, the investment. When you choose to hire somebody, retain somebody, you're investing time, energy, etc.
Absolutely. Oh, I understand. Yeah. Sometimes I write notes and I forget what I write.
I do that too. I got it in front of me though, Jody.
Thank you, Paul. And I think everything is an investment, right? I mean, we invest in other people every day that we walk out of our houses. We invest in relationships, friendships, marriages, children. I mean, friendships, working relationships, you name it. So it's so important, I think, to invest in the right types of relationships that are going to benefit both parties. Certainly when you're hiring somebody, you want to make sure that you're hiring the right person who has the right types of skills, but who also has the right personality, and who you just jive with. And, the only wrong hire is one that you can't work with. And they're all different types of personalities. Everybody gels with different people in different types of ways. And just as good to recognize that you don't get along with or work well with this type of person than it is to identify the person that you do work well with or gel with.
Yes.
Because they're going to go and gel with somebody else, and that's okay. And that's the same thing about client work. That's the same thing about what we do when we are pitching out our business to get hired by clients. There's one frame of mind that says, oh, I want everyone to hire me because I need to make money, because I need to get clients and all this. Then that's fine. But that's also, I think, a path to, destruction.
Right.
because
more transactional.
Because if you're just chasing the client, if you're just chasing the paycheck, you're going to sacrifice your mental health, your values, the way you do your business, and you're not going to do a very good job. If you pair yourself up with people who you just don't gel with in that way,
Absolutely.
you're not going to do a good job. And then that rep is going to follow you around. And that's the way people are going to refer to you. Oh, he stinks, or wow, we didn't get along with him, or he didn't do a good job. I just had a new client meeting earlier this week, and it pained me to hear them say, this old PR firm that we've been working with, they just don't, and they went through the laundry list, right, of why they're terrible. It pains me to hear that, because I think that's a result of there not being enough due diligence up front, getting to know the person. It also could be just the fact that the person wasn't that good.
Yeah, it could be.
but going back to your original question, it's all about personalities, and it's all about gel, and it's all about making sure you can work well with that person. So yeah, you got to invest the time to figure out, do I work well with this person, and then go from there.
Yeah, that is such a great point. In terms of agencies, earlier in my career when I was at Ketchum, we used to look every year at the Thomas L. Harris survey, and it was a survey of client satisfaction across the agency world. And it was fascinating to me because, Jody, most of the time, clients, when asked what causes you to end a relationship with an agency, it was about stuff that people don't think about. Their bills were late. Their people didn't return phone calls. They misspelled our names. It wasn't really about the quality of the work. It was about the quality of the relationship, which I find fascinating. But speaking about the work and the quality of the work, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on Storylines Live is because of your deep commitment to storytelling. We talked a little bit about WordWrite's view of story. Give us your sense of storytelling in general and how it's important to what you do.
Sure. Like I said, storytelling is everything that we do in terms of, getting those earned media hits that the clients are hiring us to get for them, right?
Yeah.
The newspaper stories, the TV stories, the radio stories, the digital stories. But it also lends itself to, owned media applications, your social and your blogs and your everything else, right? And all of that is storytelling. And, as a former reporter, just like you, Paul, stories are about people.
Yes.
So you've got to start with the conversation with the client, who are your people? Who are your key people that are either inside your organization, your leadership, the people who are at the tip of your spear, the people who are doing stuff all the time, the people maybe who are working directly with the outside clients or agencies, or the people you serve. Who's out there who's doing the stuff?
Yes.
And then let's explore those people and figure out what they're doing and how that feeds into your mission. Why do you task them with that thing that they do? What's important about that? And then what's the payoff of that? What's the result of that? How does that touch people and improve their lives? And you can hear that, this is the stuff that I love. I love this positive PR. People do crisis and people do all kinds of other types of PR. I love this positive storytelling PR. One, because I think the world needs more of it. Two, because I know that reporters love it more than they do the fire or the court case or the car wreck. And it's just more interesting to read about something that's going on, that's inspiring, or that is helping people, or that is making a difference in the lives of a community, or an organization, or what have you. I do a lot of work with nonprofits, especially, and a lot of different pieces of subject matter. I work with Helen Keller Services, which does deaf-blind services. I work with a local chapter of Ronald McDonald House.
Nice.
I work with another agency that provides services for victims of interpersonal violence, child abuse, interpersonal violence, domestic abuse, really hard subjects to face up to. But they each do such great work in their own way. And so I engage with them and I say, okay, who are the people who are doing the stuff? And how can we tell the story of what they're doing so that it can also serve as, because you got to think of the audience on the other end. It's not just the reporter you're talking to, you're talking to the reporter's audience. When the
Yes.
audience consumes this information, what do you want them to do? The call to action or the information that you want to relay to them so that they can take it and they can either access your services. They know someone who needs your services. They can somehow formulate an action plan based on what they read through the media. So it all comes back to storytelling with that goal in mind. And that, to me, Paul, too, is the real goal of earned media and PR.
Yes.
I tell everybody to avoid what I call the moose head effect. I say, I can get you in the newspaper. You can cut it out, frame it, put it on your wall, show your wife, and you'll call me up and you say, when are we going to do that again? What we really want is that story that appears. And then for something like this to happen, where I got a story for a client. They were super happy with the story itself. They said they went and they had a bunch of job openings and they interviewed people for these various job openings. And almost all of them said that they applied because they read that story in the paper.
I love that.
That's true ROI. That is true payoff.
Yeah, it really is. And you know, at our firm, one of the things that we say is, when it comes to your story, it is not the job of journalists or your employees or your partners or your customers or, you know, your donors to figure out what your story is. It's your job as a leader. And that's where professionals such as you and me and Jody come into the picture. You know, when I was a journalist, I ran the Business Journal in Pittsburgh. It was not my only job in journalism, but it was my last one. I mean, you know, there were companies that came to us all the time that expected by osmosis or some magic potion or process that we would take the turgid screed that was their press releases or the buried gist of their stories. And that's not the way journalism works. And frankly, it's not the way employees and future employees think, or partners or investors or any other important stakeholder audience. That's why what you just shared is so vitally important. I mean, I firmly believe that with rare exceptions, pretty much every organization in the world has one of those kinds of stories, right? And the secret to success is uncovering and developing that story and then building an entire process, structure, campaign, whatever you want to call it, to get that story out there. A lot of times in bite-sized pieces, right? You're not going to dump Tolstoy on people in the 21st century and expect them to figure out the story, but that's basically how it works, right?
Absolutely. And we get paid to dig those nuggets out. Yes. To see things from a different perspective than the client is seeing them, right? We get paid to translate or build a bridge or use whatever analogy you want to use between the thing that the client is doing and the way it's going to be most attractive to media to tell that story. I just did it earlier this week with a medical-based client. They had a medical study. Okay, great. You know, and you can hear the press release getting written, right?
Oh yeah,
and it's full of
lots of medical words.
Yeah, it's like it's written by doctors, and that's fine. It's scientific. It's got to be. That's cool. But the first thing we did is we had a discussion about what does this mean? Why is it important? As soon as we unlocked that, every reporter was like, "Oh yeah, sure, we'll write about that."
That's the way it works.
Yeah,
folks. We'll be right back with more from Jody Fisher of Jody Fisher PR. Jody, this is a great conversation. Hold tight, folks. We'll be right back. Hi, folks. We're back on Storylines Live. In this episode, we have as our guest Jody Fisher of Jody Fisher PR out of New York City. Jody is also a podcaster, host of the PR podcast, one of the top-rated podcasts globally that focuses on how the news gets made. Jody, let's talk about you for a bit here. How do you help people, and what problems do you solve for businesses?
I see myself, before I see myself as a PR person, I see myself as a counselor. And I learned this a long time ago, that good press follows good actions.
Oh yeah.
So you can't get press if you're not doing something, right? All news is written. All stories are written about somebody doing something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Or you screwed up, right? But you've still done something.
Yeah.
And so if you want good press, you got to execute good actions. That's a really clumsy way to say it. You got to do good stuff,
Totally.
right?
Mm.
And doing good is easy when that's just a decision to make. The real critical part is doing good when it's a challenge.
Mhm.
Doing good when there are ways you can do it a little differently, perhaps.
Oh, yeah.
And so being the counselor in those times of crisis, or however you define it, saying you need to do this thing because it's the right thing to do.
Mhm.
And then people will write about the right thing that you did. Look at any crisis situation and you can read that right into it.
Absolutely.
So I see myself primarily as a counselor. From there, I also see myself as, kind of a translator, like we said, between the client and the media. You've got to position the story, dig into what the thing is, figure out how to translate it into the way that the media is going to be able to latch onto it. And also, we're a little bit of matchmakers too, because we got to pair up the right stories with the right reporters. You're not going to pitch the human interest story to the business reporter. Why? Because the business reporter deals in numbers and stats and facts and figures. And every business reporter I've ever worked with, they're humans, and I pitch them a story and they go, wow, that's a really interesting story. Are there numbers to go with that? Right. So you got to be a little bit of a translator.
And what does the TV reporter say, Jody?
What am I looking at?
Are there
what
pictures, right?
Right.
They want the pictures.
How many? I got to tell you, Paul, and being a former street reporter,
yes,
I have a great appreciation for the videographers and the photographers, who many times even put themselves in harm's way to get the image that tells the story. And I did an episode of my podcast with some war zone reporters.
Oh, wow.
And war zone photographers. And this was back when the Ukraine war started, because through my lens, I knew what was coming for the newsrooms. The newsrooms were having the conversation about, all right, who are we sending over? How many flak jackets do we have? How many, who are we going to pair them up with on the other end, the guides who are going to try to keep them safe? All that kind of stuff that you don't think about when you pick up the newspaper and look at that photo of, a mortar shell going off or something. Videographers and photographers, some of the hardest working journalists out there, because they are going to the places that nobody else wants to go, or they're just putting themselves in positions where they're anticipating something to happen. Who was the great White House photographer? He's got a terrific Instagram, Pete.
Pete
Why am I
D'Souza?
blanking on Pete's?
Pete D'Souza.
Pete D'Souza, right? Pete D'Souza. And he had one of my favorite photos that he took, and this is absent of politics. One of my favorite photos that he took was of President Obama getting onto Air Force One. But it wasn't from outside, as he's walking up the stairs. It was from inside the plane, looking out. And it was just almost like a silhouette image of President Obama looking back, and the faces that you saw were the people who were down on the tarmac. It told a story, and a far more interesting image than just standing out there, taking a picture of some guy waving to the people who were,
which we've seen a million times, right? It's so important because it's like perspective is everything, right? And that's something that I think it's important for our audience to consider, that what makes the story great is the different perspective that it brings. We don't need the 5,000th story or image that says exactly the same thing. And that's why what we do is so important, because, you use the word translate. What we're doing was we're finding the way to make the story unique so that it gets coverage, right? And speaking of that, what brings you the most satisfaction in your job?
The phrase "thank you."
I'm rarely really, uttered, deeply appreciated.
I've represented plenty of pro bono clients in my career, and pro bono clients who were just amazing. Friends of the Highline was one of those clients, the nonprofit group that recreated, and rehabilitated the elevated rail line on the west side of Manhattan into the most amazing public park.
Beautiful. What an honor.
And I used when the future was not as clear for them as it is now.
Yes.
I used to tell them, when they were filled with doubt, I would say, look, you're creating something amazing here. And someday history books are going to get written, and they're going to write about two New York City parks. One of them is going to be Central Park, and the other one's going to be the High Line. So just remember that. And we got them plenty of press, obviously. But it was about 5 years after they opened the first section of the park, and there were books being written about them, and there were all kinds of things being written. And one of the co-founders just emailed me one day. He said, "You were right."
Well,
but they thanked me. But the point of my answer there is that they thanked me profusely. And whether a client is paying me a whole bunch of money or I'm working pro bono, I'm still putting in the energy that I need to put in, because again, Paul, we're reporters.
Yes.
That love a good story thing doesn't go away. And we'll work all night long because it's a great story and we can't let it out of our teeth.
Exactly.
But the word thank you goes a long, long way.
It really does. But speaking about the reporter piece of it, Jody, since you and I share that background, one of your strong beliefs is that our society requires, pick your word, a strong news media. Could you share a little bit of your thinking on that with our audience?
Sure. As a practical matter, we're both PR people, and if we don't have journalists to pitch, we're out of a job.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's just be frank about that,
yes.
right? But in a more and tapping into, again, our shared DNA here, Paul. We got into reporting because we believed in information.
Yes.
Because we believed in making sure that people were informed about the world that they live in, about what's going on. And not even necessarily uncovering the bad stuff, although we need journalists to do that, absolutely, to ask hard questions. And I think some people kind of confuse hard questions with being disrespectful. I'm not quite putting my finger on it there, but a journalist is paid to ask challenging questions. And if you're doing the right thing, questions aren't challenging. Questions are only challenging when you're doing the wrong thing.
Totally.
We need journalists to ask challenging questions to keep people honest, as well as to tell, like we were speaking about earlier, tell the positive stories about people too. There's lots of good that goes on in this world as well that doesn't get publicized. And that's another thing that I love doing, is just telling those positive stories about people who otherwise would not know how to navigate the press, because those stories can change people's lives.
They really can.
And we need vibrant and multiple sources of information. News today has become so, I think, polarized and bifurcated, trifurcated, name your, all these echo chambers, right? All these silos. I still check out all the different channels. One, because I'm a PR guy, I got to know what's going on everywhere. And I'm a news hound, so I want to know what everybody's talking about. But you also need to avail yourself of a variety of opinions. You need to avail yourself of a variety of perspectives. If you just watch one channel or just read one newspaper all day long, you're not a well-rounded member of society. And so I think we need more journalists, not less. We need more outlets, not less. Just like we need more teachers, and we need more librarians, and we need more nurses. We need more of these people to be doing these jobs, not less. And we certainly need outlets to be owned and operated by people who share those values. We don't need newspapers owned by hedge funds.
Right.
We don't need news networks owned by people who espouse one political view and nothing else. We need people who are going to put resources into these outlets, these publications, these newspapers and radio channels and radio stations and cable channels, and then get out of the way and
Yes.
let those journalists do the job you hired them to do. Because if you do that, and here, this is my opinion, I'm sure you share it. If you do that and you let those journalists go and do the thing that they want to do, that is in their DNA and they want to do, they will make you plenty of money.
Yes, they will. Yes. And I worked lots of places like that in my career. Gosh, Jody, it's such a great conversation with you in this episode. We're going to have you back, my friend. There's so much we could definitely dig into. How can our listeners find you?
You can find me anywhere on social at Jody Fisher, JodyFisher. I'm on all the socials. My website, jodyfisherpr.com. And as we mentioned, the PR podcast, which is on your favorite podcast platform, just check that out as well.
Jody, thanks again, my friend. It's been awesome to have you on Storylines Live. I do look forward to the opportunity to have you back again. Folks, thanks for joining us for this episode of Storylines Live, the only podcast where you explore the meaning and the power of the most important story in business, the one that answers why someone should buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. We'll look forward to seeing you next time on Storylines Live.